I think we need to acknowledge Bobby Joe a little bit more because those were genius lyrics, right? Genius lyrics. So I want us all to be there and attentive and willing when our dream comes and calls and wakes us up. So we're going to wake up. Stand up. And I'm going to instruct you on 3 hand claps. The first hand clap is going to represent letting go and forgiving ourselves of all the things that we should have done or thought we should have done in the last year. All right? And so on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Ooh. You're already more whole, right? The second clap is going to be invitational, where we are welcoming in this now moment, not in the future, but in this now moment, a receptivity to hear, receive, adopt, and apply anything that feels appropriate and necessary for moving forward in this now moment. 1, 2, 3. Look at you, you're all available now. And the third clap, the third and final clap, is the vision that we cast now in our availability to allow that dream that Bobby so beautifully sang about to now handhold us and to move us into an unprecedented state of willingness. Don't clap if you're not ready. Only clap if you're ready. 1, 2, 3. You're all healed. Go home. Sit down. Good morning. What an honor it has been to be with you this weekend, and yesterday was a lot of fun. And I notice that as I teach and as I dive more deeply into my own personal work, that something that I thought was pivotal is no longer pivotal, and that is change, or classifying myself as a change agent, because I realized that change is a funny thing because it allows me to change back. How many of you have changed your diet? And then you changed back. And how many of you have changed your mind about something and then you changed back? And some of us have changed particular habits only to find that there is this wiggle room of reversal where we can go back to what was. And I realized that with change that there was a limit. And that I no longer wanted to call myself an agent of change. And what's next, or what's beyond that? And it's transformation. Because with transformation, there is no space for reversal. The familiar example of the butterfly does not have the capability to squeeze itself back into the cocoon as much as it might want to. And how many times has your butterfly nature went, uh-oh, only to realize that there was no turning back? The oak tree cannot go back into the confines of an acorn. And when we look at those particular types of things and we understand that nature is such a beautiful example, then how is transformation relatable within us, the species that we call humanity? And most of that transformation must take place within consciousness. Consciousness. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said that if we were committed transformational agents and we were devoted to a particular practice for ourselves, that in a year's time when we reflected back, we would not recognize our lives. And I want you to cast that vision for a moment and think of us all being here in 2020, sitting at the beginning of the year, looking back and realizing that, my goodness, weren't we devoted to our transformation? And to consider the fundamental changes that would take place, the transformations that would take place, the unrecognizable definitions and labels that we now consider ourselves to be. And that's what I'm in for. That's what I want. I want to recognize and remember that there is this divine encoding in all of us. You know that divine encoding is in that acorn. And the acorn doesn't have what we have, which is the ability to forget. There's something that comes along with being these sentient beings and having the gift of free will, it allows us to waffle back and forth between remembering and forgetting. And a lot of times we engage more in forgetting than we do remembering. But the acorn doesn't do that. There's a divine encoding inside the bud that automatically knows when it's time to blossom, and it doesn't go back. And the bud does not contact a life coach to teach it how to move forward into that particular thing. But we all kind of need that sometimes, right? There is a divine encoding inside of an embryo that knows exactly how to formulate into an infant. And I'm here to remind you today that there is a divine encoding that is in us, that is wanting to lead us into an experience of transformation, that knows nothing of past history, that could care less about your age, that is not restricted to whatever story that you are dedicated to. It is a divine encoding that is a part of what our founder Ernest Holmes called the thing itself. The thing itself is that term in our science of mind philosophy that helps or assists us to understand that there is something so far beyond language that we understand this thing of God to be. It is the energy that created worlds. It is something so beyond our comprehension, and yet it is the very essence, the divine encoding that is completely inside of us, constantly waiting for recognition, constantly waiting for invitation to come and collaborate with us. And I've discovered that there is a way that I can personally enhance that. And we hear a lot about this term self-care. And who doesn't love a little self-care? Who doesn't love eating well? Who doesn't love a massage? Who doesn't love a mani-pedi? But I'm not talking about small s self-care. Those are the things that we do in the external. I'm talking about capital S self-care. The care of the thing itself that is inside each and every one of us. How do I do that? How do I embark upon a whole new transformational relationship with capital S self-care? And as I shared yesterday in our workshop together, I believe that the first piece of that is what we call curiosity. Curiosity is so important, and it is so healing, because how many of us actually sit devotionally with our consciousness and go, I wonder why I'm so angry. I wonder why I'm so fearful. I wonder why I have this particular injustice button polished and embedded so brilliantly, and that keeps getting pushed all the time. I wonder why I keep marrying the same person. I wonder why wherever I move, there I am. And I keep recreating the same kinds of pains and limitations. When we become curious about that rather than self-inflicting, then healing really wants to be activated. That which is transformation is going, at last, let's have a conversation. Let's explore where some of these themes that are hiding within us subjectively might have been birthed. So curiosity heals. And writer James Stevens said, curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will. I want this year to be a year of curiosity for you. I want you to become so self-compassionate that you are willing to sit in that level of contemplation and uncovery and begin to willingly invite the thing itself to come and to reveal those things to you. And I guarantee you, if you are sincere, it will happen. I talked yesterday about the fact that we have so many themes inside of us. You know, the theme of, I don't have enough time. That's a theme, right? Do you know there's actually no truth to that? But when we say it enough, when it's socially accepted, when it's globally accepted, then our experience becomes one of not having enough of this illusion called time. And when we start to think, how many of those themes am I carrying around? I can become curious around that. The writer, her name just escaped me, so I'll claim it as my own. The 6 Second Theory. 6-second theory. Carolyn Mace, thank you. Carolyn Mace, I hope she's not watching. 6-second theory said something that literally could have taken 6 seconds is defining the way in which you view the world. It is the perception by which you see everything. 6 seconds. That's not a long time. That could have been you as an adolescent overhearing a parent or a guardian talk about you in a way that might have been diminishing, and you accepted that as your truth. My familiar 6-second theory that was so fundamental in my transformation was remembering my father's passing when I was 7 years old. And I've often told the story of being the last of a tribe of children in southeast Texas, growing up poor. There weren't enough bedrooms to go around, and I slept on a cot in my parents' room, right next to the rotary phone. And when the VA hospital called in the middle of the night to inform my mother that my father had passed away, I was right there, and I was able to hear the conversation. And when she took down the information, completed the call, hung up, picked the phone back up and called my aunt, told her what happened, she then said, "What am I supposed to do with a 7-year-old boy?" 6 seconds. And in that 6-second moment, something began to stir within me. Some theme, some idea that couldn't quite label it in my 7-year-old vocabulary, but I was a burden. And it wasn't until I was an adult and doing the spiritual work and allowing myself to become curious that memory came up. And I realized how beautifully I had been faithful to that theme. And I'm here to tell you this morning that all of us have been faithful to themes that have nothing to do with the thing itself and our authentic nature. Nothing. And yet, without curiosity, we've never really pulled back the lid and began to examine and question why we've done the things that we've done. But a curiosity allows us to be so loving and so self-compassionate that those things can come up and allow us to examine in a way that perhaps we would have never explored before. It teaches us about the shadow part of us. I love shadow work. This past year, as I've been intending to move into a more transformative and expanded expression within the ministry known as me, I've given myself permission to do shadow work publicly, to really look at all of the things, all of the themes that have yet to be addressed. And what I noticed about that polarity, the polarity of the thing itself and then the lie that I tell myself, is that it's not linear. The thing itself or the truth is not over here and then the lie is over here. The light is not here and the darkness is not here. It's that it's a sphere. And when they meet up so close, you realize that the thing that you don't want to be, you're right next door to it. When we try to run away and say, I'll never be like my parent, we're actually hand-holding our parent because we're right there. And the thing that we fear becoming is actually the thing that's right there wanting our attention so we can see it. And I began to notice that when I owned that more, when I became more curious about the things inside of me that I was not addressing, that space within me that wanted to be transformed was given greater life. And so this is a year for you and I to become more curious and not to project that upon other people, but to take ownership of all behavior and all thought. That's what the thing itself invites us to be. The next thing is principle. And if you're familiar with this philosophy, you understand that word. Principle means the principle of life that tells us that for every cause there is an effect. That our thoughts actually do have the ability to create the quality of our experience. And that principle is not there just for special occasion. It doesn't have wiggle room. It's not equivalent to change. It's actually the partnership of transformation. And so principle tells us that the thing itself is constantly there even when we can't see it. I often tell my students, repeat this mantra, even in the apparent absence of. even in the apparent absence of. Say that with me. Even in the apparent absence of. So even in the apparent absence of love, the principle tells us there is nothing but love. What? Even in the apparent absence of peace, there is nothing but peace. And our journey then is to begin to move through all of the filters and all of the veils of that illusion in order for that love, that infallible love, to be experienced. And part of this human journey is understanding and strengthening our ability to be in alignment with principle. Have you ever been with someone who, in the midst of some seeming storm, has that calm centeredness about them? And you know that somewhere what they are doing, they are practicing that particular principle. In the beginning of our Science of Mind textbook, which we will be covering here in the month of January, I like to call them the preambles. And the first one is called The Thing Itself. And Ernest Holmes wrote, "This original life is infinite." Do you ever sit and ponder in meditation of what infinite means or what it means for you? It is infinite. It is good. It is filled with peace. It is the essence of purity. It is the ultimate of intelligence. It is power. It is law. It is life. It is in us. That's most important. It is in us. It is the divine embedding. It is that coding that is in us. It's here right now, regardless of your story. The thing itself is embedded inside of you because that is our inherent nature. It is that inner sanctuary of our own nature, hidden perhaps from our objective gaze. Yeah, right. How many of us cannot see it? Because the lens by which we view ourselves still needs a lot of work. Sometimes we need to break out that spiritual Windex. So break it out right now. And notice the things around the end there. Nestles the seed, the quotation marks, nestles the seed perfection. I wonder where he picked that up from. Nestles the seed perfection. Hidden, that inner sanctuary, that thing itself is in us, hidden perhaps from our objective gaze. And that's where this thing, this seed, nestles, called perfection. And that was actually from Walt Whitman, from The Leaves of Grass. Walt Whitman said, "In this broad earth of ours, amid the measureless grossness," I had to laugh at that particular phrase, "amid the measureless grossness and the slag," there's a word you use every day, right? "In this broad earth of ours, amid the measureless grossness and the slag, enclosed and safe within its central heart, nestles the seed perfection." So even in our measureless grossness, there is the thing itself. And so part of that capital S self-care is to do whatever it is devotionally in our lives to continue to practice that which we know to be principle and to embrace it and to embody it. In the book of Genesis, there is the famous foundational story about Abraham and Sarah. Abraham, as you know, the prophet Abraham led his people to the promised land, and he was married to Sarah, and there had been a prophecy about them that they would give birth to a child. But when we're reading this story, now Abraham and Sarah are very old. I would venture to say maybe they're in their 8th or 9th decade. And I can see them having tea one day and go, "You know that prophecy about having a child? I don't know about that one." And by the way, the word Abraham means father. So the scripture that says, "I and the Father are one," that's the whole explanation behind the thing itself. That we are not separate from a deity. That divine energy, the energy that created worlds That which is labeled that divine Father is what we are absorbed in a part of. We are the instrument of that. We have an Abraham nature. The word Sarah means nobility. So when you match or marry the remembrance of our thing itself nature, our God nature, with the understanding that our human expression right now is noble, then what we do is we give birth to, what was their child's name? Isaac. Isaac. And Isaac means joy. When you take your thing itself, Abraham, connected to divinity, nature, and you celebrate your personal nobility, we constantly give birth to joy. Now, the interesting thing about the story that we don't understand, because a lot of times we're so absorbed in things as literal, but the metaphysical understanding of that story is that here is the thing itself, God, asking Abraham now to take the thing that they have so fallen in love with and sacrifice it. Sacrifice it. And if we believed in an external God, we would go, oh, that's horrible and cruel. But metaphysically, you have to stop and pause for a minute and realize that sometimes we have given birth to an identity or a label, and we love that identity and that label so much, and we think that that's our joy, and we question whether or not we would be worth anything if that were taken away from us. Any of you gotten lost in your label? Any of you gotten lost in your title or your diploma or the degrees behind your name? What if that was taken away? And you see, the thing itself said, sacrifice that. Sacrifice that. And in willing to be transformed, if we follow that divine intuition, if we follow the thing itself, and it says, I don't want you to be confined by your deeds. I don't want you to be confined by your story. If you and I are willing to walk up to the altar of that transformation and let that be sacrificed to the ego, then that which is the thing itself says, hold on, I want you to keep your joy. You see, in the book of Genesis, God in that story says, hold on, just testing. You get to keep Isaac. But I like to believe that what really gets sacrificed is the ego and all of the things that we think that we are. And what is left, or what we get to keep, is an unbridled joy that is unparalleled. Have you think that you've reached the zenith of joy yet? I love to tell people, there are those in this world that you haven't even met yet that are going to be integral into your growth and your joy. Isn't that exciting? People you haven't even met yet are waiting in recognition for us to sacrifice on the altar anything egoic so that we can become more available, so that we can breathe life into capital S self-care. And lastly, I've come to realize the importance of rhythm. Rhythm has taught me that even in the apparent absence of flow, that the flow is coming right back. That I live in a world of rhythm. Language has rhythm, music has rhythm, math has rhythm. All the movement within our body has rhythm. Our heart beats with a rhythm. And when we understand that rhythm is there and inescapable, then what rhythm does is it teaches us that when we are experiencing the ebb of uncertainty, that which we need for the next evolution of expression is right around the corner and coming to us. But we won't know that. We won't be able to see that if we have forgotten our Abraham nature, the thing itself inside of us, because we will be so fixated on the ebb. So fixated on the ebb. And so rhythm is an amazing and beautiful and precious tool. The author Sonia Choquette said that the universe has a pulse and a rhythm of its own, and it wants to carry you with it So if you dance with spirit or the thing itself, just remember to let it lead. That's the part of the thing you have to sacrifice on the altar, wanting to control the way it looks. Jennifer Mann told you about some of my initiatives and work in the world, and I'm deeply embedded right now in building the very first school in a slum in Lakhanpur, India, which is in the Bihar state right below the Nepal. And they've never had a school before. And it's a long story how we found this place, but in the past 12 months, we've been educating a group of about 40 Indian children in a cow barn. And I was there a great deal of March, sitting on the floor of that cow barn, amidst all of the dung on the walls and the flies, and being in amazement of watching children who've never had any formal education spouting off ascending and descending fractions, reading, and the comprehension of their reading escalating with such ferocity. It was just astounding to me. And it taught me about rhythm. And it said, when we are ready and when we are willing, that which wants to come through us, the genius inside of us, wants to be expressed, and we are available for that, there is no stopping what can happen. And I would forget all this year as we tried to acquire a piece of land, and I went through all of the hurdles with the government and the money raising and everything that had to happen. And sometimes it just seemed as though there was ebb. And I'm very happy to tell you that 3 days ago we finalized the paper for the land in that slum. And sometime this year, I'm believing that by the spring, we will have the funding to actually begin to build the building. And those kids will move forward because I believe that education is everything. It's everything. And so capital S, self-care, how will you approach that this year? What do we have with us? We have curiosity, we have principle, and we have rhythm. And what I've come to learn is that CPR, the CPR that activates and brings our life back so that we are the perfection and the implementation and the perfect instrument for the thing itself. So it is. If you will close your eyes for a moment and just take a deep breath and check in and see where are you in your willingness to activate these steps of self-care, capital S, self-care. Are you willing to be so reverent with you this year? And what I know that if we are willing, that we call now forth that divine guidepost, that hand-holding, those beloved teachers, everything, the messages, the classes, everything that is rightfully designed and synchronistic to what it is that we need. We see it now showing up in that perfect order, in that perfect rhythm. We see ourselves saying yes to that. We see ourselves dissolving all resistance and moving into an unprecedented state of allowing. And we know that as we walk through this year in that energy and in that allowing, indeed, as we reflect back, we will no longer recognize who we are, for we will have been transformed. And together we say, and so it is.